Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. You don't choose your family. They are God's gift to you as you are to them. Exclusion is never the way forward on our shared path to freedom and justice. If you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Family isn't about whose blood you have, it's about who you care about. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. If you want peace, you don't talk to your friends, you talk to your enemies. I wish I could shut up, but I can't, and I won't. When the missionaries came to Africa, they had the Bible and we had the land. They said, let us pray, and then we closed our eyes. When we opened them, we had the Bible and then they had the land. These are Desmond Tutu quotes. RIP Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu is South Africa's moral conscience. Late 70s, 80s, he was one of the most prominent opponents of South Africa's apartheid system of racial segregation and white minority rule. Although warning the National Party government that anger at apartheid would lead to racial violence, as an activist, he stressed non-violent protest and foreign economic pressure to bring about universal suffrage. After President F.W. de Klerk released the anti-apartheid activist Nelson Mandela from prison in 1990, and the pair led negotiations to end apartheid and introduce multiracial democracy. Tutu assisted as a mediator between rival black factions after the 1994 general election resulted in a coalition government headed by Mandela. The latter selected Desmond Tutu to chair the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate past human rights abuses committed by both pro- and anti-apartheid groups. Following apartheid's fall, Tutu campaigned for gay rights and spoke out on a wide range of subjects, among them his support of Palestinians in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, alongside his simultaneous belief in Israel's right to exist, his opposition to the Iraq War, and his criticism of South African presidents Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma. U.S. President Ronald Reagan met with Desmond Tutu in 1984. Desmond Tutu described Ronald Reagan's administration as an unmitigated disaster for black people, and Reagan himself as a racist, pure and simple. Which is true. Reagan was terrible for apartheid South Africa. He funneled weapons through Israel to bin Laden, and he funneled weapons to help Mandela's enemies. So for Ronald Reagan, Nelson Mandela was a villain, and bin Laden, a freedom fighter. In 1981, whilst Tutu was addressing 15,000 black mourners at a funeral of the civil rights lawyer Griffiths Minx Inej, the crowd set upon a suspected government agent and were intent on necklacing him. Desmond Tutu ran to the victim, threw himself across the prostrate man, and demanded the crowd cease their violence towards him. As the crowd calmed, Tutu led the man to his own car and drove him away. Desmond Tutu cried publicly and privately. He was an empath. He felt people's pain. Desmond Tutu popularized the term Rainbow Nation as a metaphor for post-apartheid South Africa after 1994 under ANC rule. Tutu advocated what liberation theologians called critical solidarity, offering support for pro-democracy forces while reserving the right to criticize his allies. Desmond Tutu criticized Nelson Mandela on several points. On one, such as his tendency to wear brightly colored Madiba shirts, which Desmond Tutu regarded as inappropriate. Nelson Mandela offered the tongue-in-cheek response that it was ironic coming from a man who wore dresses. Desmond Tutu's criticism of Nelson Mandela's retention of South Africa's apartheid-era armaments industry and the significant pay packet that the newly elected members of parliament adopted Mandela hit back, said that Desmond Tutu was a populist, and stated he should have raised those issues privately rather than publicly. We are made for goodness. We are made for love. We are made for friendliness. We are made for togetherness. We are made for all the beautiful things that you and I know. We are made to tell the world that there are no outsiders. All are welcome. Black, white, red, yellow, rich, poor, educated, not educated, male, female, gay, straight. All. We all belong to this family, this human family, God's family. Like when you sit in front of a fire in the winter. Are you all right? Like when you sit in front of a fire in winter, you're just there in front of the fire. You don't have to be smart or anything. The fire warms you. TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, was passed by Parliament July 1995. Nuttall suggested that Desmond Tutu become one of TRC's 17 commissioners, while September, a synod of bishops formally nominated him. Desmond Tutu proposed that the TRC adopt a threefold approach. The first being confession, with those responsible for human rights abuses fully disclosing their activities. The second being forgiveness in the form of a legal amnesty from prosecution. And the third being restitution, with the perpetrators making amends to their victims. Now, Trevor Noah had said that the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, is actually what brought South Africans together, white and black, because they had that much needed conversation about race. They had that much needed conversation. And it's what Malcolm X had said. Malcolm X had said that when a white man and a black man could sit down together and talk about racism without getting their feelings hurt, then we'll see reconciliation. So South Africa did what America needs to do. Have a conversation about race. Have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Maybe we won't get reparations, but maybe we'll get a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We were made to enjoy music, to enjoy beautiful sunsets, to enjoy looking at the billows of the sea, and to be thrilled with a rose that is bedecked with dew. We were made to enjoy music, to enjoy beautiful sunsets, to enjoy looking at the billows of the sea, and to be thrilled with a rose that is bedecked with dew. Human beings are actually created for the transcendent, for the sublime, for the beautiful, for the truthful. And all of us are given the task of trying to make this world a little more hospitable to these beautiful things. The commission, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the TRC, was a significant undertaking and employed over 300 staff divided into 3 committees and held as many as 4 hearings simultaneously. In the TRC, Desmond Tutu advocated restorative justice, something which he considered characteristic of traditional African jurisprudence in the spirit of Ubuntu. Restorative justice. The first hearing took place in April 1996. The hearings were publicly televised and had a considerable impact on South African society. Desmond Tutu had very little control over the committee responsible for granting amnesty, instead chairing the committee which heard accounts of human rights abuses perpetuated by both anti-apartheid and apartheid figures. While listening to the testimony of victims, Desmond Tutu was sometimes overwhelmed by emotion and cried. He singled out those victims who expressed forgiveness towards others. The ANC's image was tarnished by revelations that some of its activists had engaged in torture, attacks on civilians, and other human rights abuses. It sought to suppress part of the final TRC report, infuriating Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu warned of the ANC's abuse of power, stating that yesterday's oppressed can quite easily become today's oppressors. We've seen it happen all over the world, and we shouldn't be surprised if it happens here. Desmond Tutu presented the 5-volume TRC report to Mandela in a public ceremony in Pretoria, October 1998. Ultimately, Desmond Tutu was pleased with the TRC's achievement, believing that it would aid long-term reconciliation, although recognized its shortcomings. Do your little bit of good where you are. It's those little bits of good put together that overwhelm the world. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. Forgiveness says you are given another chance to make a new beginning. We learn from history that we don't learn from history. When we see others as the enemy, we risk becoming what we hate. When we oppress others, we end up oppressing ourselves. All of our humanity is dependent upon recognizing the humanity in others. A person with Ubuntu is open and available to others, affirming of others, does not feel threatened that others are able and good, for he or she has a proper self-assurance that comes from knowing that he or she belongs in a greater whole and is diminished when others are humiliated, or diminished when others are tortured or oppressed. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. Forgiveness says you are given another chance to make a new beginning. Yesterday's oppressed can quite easily become today's oppressors. My father used to say, don't raise your voice, improve your argument. Good sense does not always lie with the loudest shouters, nor can we say that a large, unruly crowd is always the best arbiter of what is right. Don't raise your voice. Improve your argument. If you're neutral in situations of injustice, and then you've chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Let's try that again. If you're neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. RIP Desmond Tutu, South Africa's moral conscience.